do Sasha's first? Oh, awesome. So we had one of our Ignite speakers, Sasha Rosenbaum from 10th Magnitude. Unfortunately, she's not able to make it. She's in Israel. But she recorded her Ignite using the Ignite format. And we're going to be presenting that first. It's maybe a little bit of a cheater to be able to do that. I should find out if she did it in one take or not. But we did want to share that. So we'll play Sasha's and then we'll move into our regular presenters. So are we ready, Brian? Are we ready, Tom? Let's go.
Hi, my name is Sasha Rosenbaum, and I'm very happy to be with you here today, though not in person because I got stuck overseas, and I leave it to you to guess what country from my accent. I want to talk to you about implementing change in your organization because many of us happen to work for companies that are just making their first steps towards DevOps. And I want to talk to you about the obstacles that you may be facing and how you could potentially address these obstacles to move your company closer to a better future. Hopefully I can give you a couple of ideas that will help you overcome the challenges you're dealing with. If you're working for a company that has not yet been inspired by the idea of DevOps, the first challenge you will face is ideology. When you first bring up the idea of DevOps, you will face a lot of resistance from people around you. And what often happens is that we try to refute their specific arguments only to face new arguments a minute later. Because the truth is, the person next to us isn't really concerned about size or cost or company culture, but rather is protesting against the change itself. What helps in this situation is volunteering to take responsibility. People are afraid of change because they do not want to be a part of its failure. Don't spend your time arguing about what works best. Go ahead and push the change and then come to your boss with positive results, and he will applaud your efforts. Another problem that you're likely to face is budget. Every client I've ever met wanted to get perfect software, but none of them ever wanted to pay for process, and none of them wanted to pay for QA. Trying to justify to your client why they need to pay for a change that is almost transparent to them can be very frustrating. In this case, what really helps is translating the change to budget. Don't tell them you will produce better software, because the term is too abstract. Tell them it will take you 30 minutes instead of 3 days to get from a bug fix to a release to production, and this will save them money on every future release. Here's another enemy we all know and love, the deadline. Your boss is now convinced that you need to become more DevOpsy, and you got the approval to invest time into making this happen, but your company's most important project ever just happens to end this month, and it cannot be finished without throwing you into the burning fire. This is actually very difficult to overcome, at least as the least urgent tasks keep getting pushed to the bottom of the list. One of the things that I've found helpful is setting small goals. Say I will set up the test to run automatically on commit for one project, but I will do it this week. It's a tiny step, but it moves us towards CI. Okay, but just because we're all friends here, I am going to tell you something that's a big secret. After a while, I realized that the main challenge I was facing was none of the things I mentioned to you before. I was quite surprised when I realized where the biggest resistance is coming from. It was coming from me. Despite being inspired by the idea of DevOps, I found myself time and time again doing things the old way when I knew better. It felt safer and faster to go through the protocols I was familiar with instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. I was reluctant to invest time and effort into the change even when I had it. One thing that helped me is engaging my team, because it's always more fun to work on something together. It's easier to come up with ideas, and it's easier to not push things down the line when you make a commitment to someone else on your team. Secondly, it helps me to keep a list of the things I would like to get to. It happens to me a lot that I have an idea of an improvement I like to make, but I simply don't have the time at the moment. 2 weeks from now, when I happen to have the time, when I happen to have spare cycles, I don't know about you, but I'm not very likely to remember what I wanted to do. It helps to have a list. It also helps to record my actions, because we often go through processes that are repeatable and we aren't even noticing. Every time you release a new version or you troubleshoot a bug, you go through a lot of actions that can be automated. Script them out now. Most importantly, remember who you're doing this for. You're not doing this for your boss, and you're not doing this for your company, and you're not even doing this to put DevOps on your resume. You're doing this mainly for yourself because you want to get your precious weekends back. Because the more teamwork you create, the more repeatable processes you automate, the shorter you make the process of releasing or rolling back your software, the less the likelihood that you will spend your weekend pushing through an integration and get a call on a Sunday morning asking you to troubleshoot an obscure bug for your client. So with this, good luck.
Right, so let's go back a little bit in time and go back to Randy's talk, where she was having you think about something that really incensed you, something maybe that appeared on Twitter from you. So whatever makes you angry, you usually say, "Oh my gosh, how did they even think that was possible? Like what are they even thinking?" So Dunning-Kruger actually investigated people's perceptions of their own skills and developed a study that went something like this. So students, actually unsuspecting undergrads from Cornell University, were created into a pool that first estimated their test scores on like grammar, logic, and humor. So they estimated what they might get on this test. And then after they took the test, they said, "Oh, I thought I did like about the same." The test scores actually didn't change that much pre and post test. So the actual scores look something like this. The novice, the lowest was like 11%. And that person thought they got a 60 or 70%. So besides the fact that everyone thinks they're a little bit above average, what else can we glean from this? So the fact that novices severely overestimate their skills is a sign that we could call novices severely overestimate their skills. But the other nugget that we can find from here is that experts underestimate their skills. They may not realize, "Oh, I actually am good at this domain of grammar, logic, or humor." So what are the two things that we can come away from with the Dunning-Kruger effect is novices are likely to overestimate themselves, and experts underestimate themselves. So you might be raring to go and take this back to your coworkers and explain to them, "You have no idea what you're doing. You're a novice," while you write this code that's terrible. But unfortunately, this effect applies to everyone, including me. So one of my goals this year was to take a psychology topic and port it into the software engineering domain. So that's this talk. I submitted bunches and bunches of proposals to conferences and kept getting denied. And I kept thinking, they don't have any idea what they're missing out on. So eventually, I'm here delivering this talk, and I started thinking about what I wanted to talk about, developing a presentation, and gave it to some of my coworkers. And they, I think, left the room more confused than when they came into the room. So I was like, what did I get myself into? What gave me the idea that I thought I would have the credentials to talk on psychology, which I didn't go to school for. I went to school for computer science. So at that point, I was like, how can I recover from this? Like, how am I going to put some people to work? What quotes am I going to throw up on the screen and just read them off? And then I wish I would have known I could have just recorded myself, right? So this is what I looked like after the process of realizing I was an unaware novice at giving an Ignite presentation. This is my first Ignite presentation ever in my life. So I was like, oh, let's do this topic that I don't really know that much about, and then also give a talk that I've never given that type of format before. So I realized that this is what it feels like to be an unaware novice. And after a while of thinking what it is to go from a novice to an expert, I realized the fun is in the hard work. The fun is in figuring out what you don't know and transforming that into something that you do know. So this is, I love the Lego movie and Legos itself. So so I realized I loved experiencing learning something, and we don't really we don't really think about that on a normal basis. We think about what we're terrible at, what we're experts at. And I stopped posturing myself as a Lord Thought Leader, and actually got to this Confucius quote that says, "Real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance." So what would happen if we took this and took it upon ourselves to make this kind of our mantra as the DevOps movement, as the software engineering movement, and transformed ourselves the same way we're transforming systems around us? So I'm Seth.
Hello. So this might come out as a rant, just because that's what I do the best. So, okay. There we go. So my talk's going to be about keeping DevOps simple. This is actually something that I've kind of overheard a lot of people say. It's like getting complex, it's getting too complicated to do. And I actually run into these situations day to day with like my team or former teammates. So when we look at DevOps itself, we're actually looking at the philosophy of what DevOps is. You can see very simple things that help orchestrate DevOps as what it is. But simple is not defined explicitly there. And that's a problem because a lot of people want to shove a lot of stuff into their project and try to get something going. But they can't do it because maybe the pieces don't fit or the connections don't work. So if we take a step back and we actually look at it, we are making it complex for ourselves. We're making it complex for other team members or the company. We're not actually solving that one problem. We're introducing more problems down the line. So we really want to slow down and take a step back and look. Sorry the titles aren't showing up, but this is actually what I'm calling the Kyle syndrome. This is a Nixel from the Legos. And these are the people that actually put steps or processes, or they put those systems in place that they actually caused a lot of Rube Goldberg designs. So your day-to-day is just filled with left and right obstacles, little here and there pieces, and we're making it complicated. So this actually leads into a couple of things that we do not want to deal with. We are turning into 4 a.m. wake-up calls, pager duty. I'm on it all the time. I get woken up at 3 a.m., and this is something I do not like because I love my sleep. So then we're also creating technical debt. We're going to be creating what happens when that person leaves. They're gone. They're away from the company. The next guy, the lucky person that has to take over the project, they are the ones that have to support it. They are not going to know what to do because it's such a complicated process. And so like now we want to stop these people. We want to actually slim it down. We want to make sure that we are not getting overboarded. We're not getting slammed with a bunch of bad ideas or what were good ideas at a certain time. So this isn't a silver bullet, but it's kind of like 4 questions that we really want to like ask that person or ask the team or ask your company, is this what we want to do next? Because if we do this, we can maybe bring down the problems and actually make a very simplified solution for one thing. So is it really needed? Can it be done a different way? This actually causes people to reflect on what they are doing, what they actually are working on. Is it what is really needed for the project? Do we need to throw all this stuff in there? Well, probably not. Is it a solution that actually solves the problem? Now, you can bring in M Collective, Puppet, Chef, all these bells and whistles, but does it actually solve what you are trying to do? And we've had many situations where projects have been bloated. And is there something else out there that already does this? We don't want to reinvent the wheel, essentially. We want something new. We want to make sure that we are actually making it easier to maintain. And is it good for the company? If it's not good for the company, then it's probably not the right thing to do. You're just doing it to stress your muscles a little bit, and that's not really something you should be doing. You should actually be looking for the good of the team and the company. So there's 5 other things that we can do, maybe even cause that person to reflect on, and hopefully it will just be like, it will change their idea or change the team's mentality. So one of the first things is just say no. Just tell them no. Give them reasons. Don't just tell them no, that's stupid, but give them reasons why and try to make them think of another path. Maybe they're just geared because they read it on Hacker News and you have to change that on them. The next one is, can you actually simplify the system? Can you actually rip pieces out? Can you remove them when they're not needed? That is something that a lot of people kind of struggle with because they think they have the golden child of a application. So don't try to shove everything in there. That's another big thing. It's like there are a lot of tools out there that we all can use, and there's a lot of processes that we can use. But do you need to implement them all? Is it good for your company or is it good for your team? You don't know. Make them have transparency. Transparency with the team is awesome because now they actually have to tell other people or other members of the company what they are doing. Not a secret project anymore. Transparency is a big one. And even though it's not the right solution, there probably is definitely a simpler solution that we can do to solve a lot of the processes and tools and automation that we work on. So really it's this. Simplify everything. Make everybody become lazy. Don't work too hard. Go with the flow. Just don't go against resistance. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve. Hi. That was awesome. So I'm from Toronto. I work for a company called My Planet, and this presentation is basically a recipe for sort of driving technical change and implementing the principles of DevOps in an organization. So a quick intro, read about cybernetics. I'm not going to get into it. It's from 1948. It's really old, tried and true scientific documentation about that, courtesy of Paul, who turned me onto that in the first place. So a simpler explanation for DevOps is CAN, right? You've seen this all the time. This is from David Edwards and John Willis from Mountain View in 2010. And it's just a classic TLDR, culture, automation, measurement, sharing. We've all heard it this weekend. And it's the pieces that sort of make up a common understanding of DevOps. We also have the 3 ways, right? Anyone who's read the Phoenix Project. So Gene Kim gets into things like systems thinking, where you're thinking holistically about the way that you do things and how everything fits into the system. And then you also have a focus on feedback, right? Communicating with people, sharing knowledge, and basically broadcasting information around that system and making sure that people have access to that information. And then the last part, which is the real difficult thing, is the culture of continual experimentation and learning, right? So actually running things in a lean method, or thinking of things scientifically, where you're iterating on change. So culture is this thing that gets tied to DevOps, and I think it's really, really difficult to grasp, like, how does that work for me? Like, how do I actually do anything to make headway here? And people run into trouble because it's not really well defined. It's different for every organization. And sometimes you just give up, right? Because it's this big abstract thing where you don't know if you're making any progress or not, right? So my proposal shouldn't be surprising, it's right in the talk title, but I've got this simple method that I use to sort of run people through a recipe, right? You take the ingredients and you apply the recipe. And the recipe for me is sharing, measurement, automation, and control. And all those pieces in that order, running through that as a cycle, really helps actually get results. And starting from sharing, you can share the idea of DevOps with your team, share the concepts, share that, share information about DevOps and articles and books and what you're working on, what you think, what the company's direction should be. Then you measure, basically. You measure your baseline, you measure your progress, you measure your failures, your successes, measure errors, measure how long it takes to do things. And out of all that, you can sort of start to automate, right? You can start to take those learnings and figure out what's really worthwhile for us to do, right? What should we be spending time on? And you can derive a lot of automation benefit from that by focusing in the right places. And control really speaks to this sort of long-term life cycle. You know, the best practice of like, okay, we've done a thing, how do we make sure that it now like works for the long term, right? Is it documented? And culture is sort of the result of all those things, right? You don't have to attack culture head on. Culture will grow out of all of the results following the process repeatedly. So I have one more thing, and it's about confidence. Confidence is another result that's a little bit more tangible than culture. So confidence is being able to sort of say that, you know, we know what's going on, we know what the system looks like, we know where we're going, we know what we should focus on, and it really enables your team to trust each other. It enables devs to trust ops, ops to trust dev, and everyone to trust that the business is heading in the right way. So here's my prescription. I probably won't get through it in time, but there's pieces that are really important, like value stream maps, mapping your process from start to finish, sharing, collaborating, look at things holistically, and then dive into your bottlenecks and what's broken and tackle them specifically. Yeah, so the final thought, share, everyone share. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Wait for my slides. You guys having a good conference? Great. Last talk, so then we're done. All right, so my name's Doug Barth. I'm an operations engineer at PagerDuty, formerly a developer. I've seen both sides of the house, and today I want to give you guys 4 strategies for living without scheduled maintenance in your system. PagerDuty technically says we do scheduled maintenance, but we never do. So let's start off, why would you want to avoid scheduled maintenance? First one, started out my career, scheduled maintenance tends to occur on a weekend at 2 a.m., and that sucks. I don't like getting up, you don't like getting up. So anything we can do to do our work during the day is just, you know, make your life better. Second, even though we tell ourselves that, well, there's a small subset of customers that are using our service at 2 a.m., there still are customers using our service, and if they're up at 2 a.m., maybe they really need your service to work right now. If you do too much scheduled maintenance, they're going to get very frustrated. And thirdly, I'd argue that if your system uses scheduled maintenance regularly, it's actually pointing out to you that you are less reliable than you think you are because you're unwilling to introduce change into that system for fear of breaking it. So the first strategy, you need rock-solid deployments. They need to be scripted. They need to be fast, right? You need to be able to deploy quickly. You need to be able to roll back quickly, and you should probably test that periodically to make sure you don't have like a 5-minute rollback period. Second, the thing that you are deploying needs to be forward and backward compatible by one version, because during this deployment process, you will effectively be running 2 versions of the application. It's not an option to stop everything and then push out the new version. And you also want to make sure that you don't accidentally kick out all of the capacity of your system, right? So these scripted deployments should do some sort of, you know, red, blue, green deployment where you're only changing 1/3 of your infrastructure at a time. And kind of a pet peeve of mine, if you have a stateless app or stateful app server, that's just wrong. You shouldn't have any state in your apps. You should be able to reboot an app and not affect a customer. They shouldn't be logged out. They shouldn't have their shopping cart lost. So make sure that any state is pushed down to a database or some sort of infrastructure piece. Second strategy, avoid knife edge changes like the plague. So this hits at basically every level, but it's the same thing, right? When we do a deploy, you don't really want to deploy the entire app. You want to do some sort of canary deploy, so you can make sure that your system is still working. You can compare the new version versus the old version. Another way to do this, Flickr does this, other companies do it, is feature gating. So you put out code dark, and then you slowly turn it up. And make sure you build your feature gates in a way that you can bring up a certain percentage of your customers on that new feature and monitor how well it's doing. Anytime you're changing infrastructure, figure out ways that you can bleed traffic over from one system to another. Replacing a load balancer, don't just turn off the old balancer and flip it to the new one. Figure out how you can slowly push it over there. And this one I kind of like. If you're making changes to your application and you're going to put new code into the critical path of your application, a good strategy for introducing that into production and not bringing things down is put it in execute it, log any errors, but don't depend on it right away, right? Make sure you have it exercised before you actually make it something you depend on. Third strategy is you need to have lots of retries built into your system. So any service layer hop, there should be retries built in. It should go to different servers. It should have exponential backoff so that you don't overwhelm those servers. And the requests that you're making between service layers need to be idempotent. So that means that you can reissue that request to a new server without fear of it double applying that change. So figure out ways to make your services like that. If your clients don't actually care about the response from the service, put a queue between them. That way you can always push work to that service. If it happens to be down, you can bring it back up later and it'll work it. If you're stuck with request response flows, figure out ways to have circuit breakers in. So this is the concept where whenever you make a call to a service, your client library knows enough to say that service is down. I will return back a minimal result so that I don't bubble up latency or bubble up errors to the front end. Fourth strategy, distribute your data to as many servers as possible. We use Percona XtraDB clusters to give us a 3-node multi-master MySQL cluster. That helps with operations, helps with vertically scaling without taking the service down. We also use Cassandra. It's basically the same concept, right? You have multiple database servers. None of them are really that special. So then you can do operational work during the day. And lastly, as you grow, at some point you are probably going to have to do or think about how to shard your data, because then you are now only affecting a subset of your customer base. But I wouldn't start with that because it's much more painful. So just start with something simple like a multi-master cluster. So then again, if anyone didn't see these, rock solid deployments, avoid knife edge changes, lots of retries, and distribute your data. Hope that was helpful. And I'd love to talk about what PagerDuty does if anyone wants to talk. Thanks.
Okay, before we move into Ignites, is Jason from VictorOps